All right. So the first question is, what is your stance on dress codes?
I think it's a tricky question because my first instinct is to say that I am against them, but I think like there's some things within reason to be asked of, like for dress code, and so I think they are maybe a necessary evil, but have to be really closely looked at.
Right. Okay. How did you feel about dress codes when you were in school, and did that change when you started teaching?
I think I didn't necessarily think about them a lot. I like to dress in like big baggy clothes and like flannel pants, and so it didn't really impact me as much.
Right.
But I do know that even when I was younger, like I had this feeling like, I'm sure this is one of your questions later, but like that it felt like the dress codes were mostly for girls and not for guys. And that always just like, there was always just like this slight feeling of like, well, but why is there a difference there?
Right.
And so that was, I think, the most that like I ever had of any little thought.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, do you want to like elaborate on that? Like, did you ever feel like or see certain times that the dress code was unfair?
Yeah, I think back to especially times when we would go on, like if there were school trips or church trips or whatever, something like that, where, you know, you're supposed to bring a swimsuit, and it was always like, hey, girls, you need to have like a one piece, ideally that like goes from like under your chin to your ankles, you know, like maybe not that extreme, but you know, like that kind of thing. And then it was like, boys, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. And so I think I actually have a friend who also works with students, and he has done this thing that I think is awesome, that he's like, okay, so we do want to make sure we don't have things that are like clothing or dress or attire that's distracting, but if we're going to ask something of the girls, we need to ask the same kind of things as the guys. Yeah. So anytime he goes on a trip where like swimsuits or something like that is required, he says, okay, sure, girls wear one pieces, but guys, you're going to have t-shirts on with your shorts at all times. Yeah. And so it's at least not just like, hey, girls, your bodies are gross, and so we need to cover them up. Yeah. It's like, okay, if we're going to ask for modesty or whatever it is, or less distractions from one group of people, we need to do it for everyone.
Yeah. So this isn't like a question I had, but do you think that dress code should be enforced like even not in like religious settings?
I think, like, if we're looking at the school setting, I think there are things that are definitely, I think as a teacher and as someone who cares about, like, every kid who walks into my room, that, you know, if you have things that, like, are supporting violence or aggression against whoever, anyone. Yeah. I mean, things that are obviously not allowed in school, like drugs, alcohol, stuff like that. I think that's a pretty clear line. But beyond that, as far as, I'm like, you know, when you think about like the modesty rules, and this is someone who grew up in like where there was like a lot of battle over like, what does that actually look like? What does that look like for women? And never really the question of what it looks like for men. Yeah. That, you know, like I remember being told I could never wear spaghetti straps, which is weird because like, what's wrong with my shoulders? Right. But there, I mean, at the same time, I don't think it's actually helpful to anybody in a school setting if like everyone's in their underwear. So there has to be a line somewhere, you know? Yeah. And so I think it's trying to define as much as possible, okay, what is fair, what's actually going to distract from our primary purpose in this setting, like in a school setting. But also make sure that, again, this is something that is really, that's your purpose in saying, hey, this is the code. That it's not to be a distraction, not to harm people, and so I don't think you can necessarily justify like spaghetti straps as being harmful or distracting. That makes sense. if that helps.
Has there ever been a memorable incident you've seen or heard about while teaching with dress codes?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just, I don't know if I have a specific one. Well, maybe I do. It was actually when I was coaching in high school that there was routinely, I coached tennis, and so this was back in Illinois, we would have coaches who would be really upset if my girls' tennis team would wear, you know, like a tight-fitting tank top,
Mm.
or tennis players wear short skirts. Like,
Yeah.
we just do.
Yeah.
And so that was the uniform. And so I'd have male coaches who would, be like, hey, you know what, maybe you should talk to your players. But at the same time, we have, like the cross-country guy runners who are running past the courts in their short shorts and shirtless. And it just feels like there's some kind of discrepancy here where, like, that's just fine.
Yeah.
And my girls, who I think are appropriately clothed, are being called out. And so, again, there's just a difference that needs to be rectified. If we're going to, like, if you're going to have some restrictions, everyone needs to have restrictions.
Right. Yeah. So, have you ever seen any positive or negative outcomes of enforcing dress codes in school?
I mean, I guess, if positive would be that, I mean, like, if you have something that's going to scare or make someone feel in danger because of whatever it's representing. So it's more, I'm thinking like more of like the graphics or whatever language is on, is on a shirt or pants or whatever, that could, like, as long as, if we don't allow those, that I think is a positive thing.
Yeah.
Because we don't want anyone to enter a space and feel like, for whatever reason, they have to be nervous or threatened or not safe in whatever way to be themselves. And so I think that's a positive outcome. But honestly, like, so many more negative outcomes. I mean, like, for so much of my life, I still, like, even into adulthood, I would question whether it was appropriate for me to, like, dress a certain way.
Right.
And so I think the unintended consequence of dress codes, especially for girls and women, is that we're told, hey, like, it's your fault if someone, like, looks at you a certain way.
Right.
And so you need to prevent that, instead of really addressing, wait, maybe, like, we don't deserve to be looked at that way no matter what. And again, within reason, like, don't walk around in, like, your underwear. But at the same time, I think that is the underlying message, when it's just, hey, cover up.
Yeah.
That you're doing something wrong. And so, I mean, I think that has less, it's harder to, like, quantify and probably, like, quantify and qualify that, that, people could refute it and be like, no, it doesn't do that. But like, there is, I think, psychological impact, and mental and emotional impact when you're told, oh, you can't dress a certain way because maybe that will, impact other people around you.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So kind of tying into that, do you feel dress codes have disproportionately affected certain groups of students?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like what I see is that it's gotten better from when, like, I was in high school, but it's still, oh, you have low battery. It's okay. Here we go. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. But yeah, I think until we have, like, we make the decision that we're going to make the same calls, no matter who you are, no matter, like, gender, body type, whatever, then, no, I mean, historically it's been the girls who are impacted, who are called out, and so, and I think it's very, very disproportionate.
Yeah, okay. Do you feel dress codes for teachers and employees are also important?
It's probably the same kind of thing to a point. I mean, if your primary purpose in going in to teach is to teach, then you don't want to be distracting. And so again, there's, like, a lot of nuance to it of what, people should be allowed to show who they are and dress in a way that expresses who they are. And also make sure that we maintain a safe environment where what we're going after, so, like, in a school, education, and, like, the growth of a full person, because I think teachers are more than just, like, there to just dump, like, information into your head. Like, we're trying, like, if we're doing it right, we're trying to actually impact you as a whole person, and, like, whatever the language is, make you better citizens and all of that. But really, I mean, So if our dress is not distracting from that, great.
Mhm.
So like, it's always tricky, and I'm guessing like, if I looked at what the dress, like, reviewed what the dress code is for the district, that it's also probably like pretty vague
Mhm.
of like, hey, express yourself, and also like, which is kind of, I don't know how to define it even. I
Right,
wish I
yeah.
had a better way to define it, but yes, like dress code to a point, but that point has to be reasonable and equal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then our final question is: do you believe that dress codes contribute to keeping the classroom controlled and disciplined?
Probably a little bit, but probably not as much as some people would lead you to believe.
Right.
This is not like the primary concern,
Mhm.
and I think you have some. I mean, like, maybe it's generational, maybe it falls along gender lines. I don't know, but like, there are going to be certain people who will try to attribute a lot of what's wrong in schools or whatever with dress code violations, and I have never found it to be a major issue, whether I'm like in the classroom or out on the tennis court or in the gym or whatever. Again, I mean, like, there are certain lines that I think are clear, more along graphics, but I wouldn't say that it's a main contributor to impacting and distracting the classroom.
Right. Well, thank you.
You're
Do you have
welcome.
any other thoughts you'd like to add? Or?
I think that's it.
Great. Thank you so much.